You walk into a room full of people. Some speak, some laugh, others whisper. You don't announce your presence. You don't force your way. You simply arrive, and something shifts. Without saying a word, you already influence the air, the way people turn their heads, the faint pause in conversation. You sense it all. This is the beginning of real power, unseen, unheard, yet deeply felt. Comment below, ever used silence to win? Because in silence lies your greatest strategy. You will soon understand that the softest gesture, the quietest breath, can yield more control than any shouted command. In the next pages, you'll discover how to deploy inner stillness like armor, letting your presence speak for you. Silence is not emptiness, it is full. It contains tension, possibility, awareness. When you cease your internal chatter, the world rushes in to fill the void. You begin catching subtle cues, the micro-expressions on a brow, the shift of weight between someone's feet, the hesitation before a sentence. These small details, invisible to most, become your guideposts. When others assume they hide behind silence, you know they lie. Because silence is not neutral, it is a field in which meaning accumulates. Every blank pause is charged with expectation. Every quiet look is an opportunity. You learn that people speak in their bodies when their lips are sealed. And in reading those non-verbal words, you gain insight few possess. In this introduction, I will show you why silence is your hidden weapon, how the Stoics framed quiet mastery, and how even the smallest restraint transforms your influence. This is not about gimmicks or manipulation, it's about virtue, discipline, and presence. You will understand how to be quietly powerful, not through noise, but through refined depth. L'outil why silence is a strategic weapon. The common world believes the loudest voice wins, but the Stoics taught otherwise. They saw that self-control, not volume, secures dominion over mind and circumstance. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Choosing when to speak is a sign of wisdom. Wisdom often dwells in silence. Silence arrests attention. People lean forward when someone stops talking. An empty pause unsettles chatter. In that moment of discomfort, individuals search for meaning. Your calm silence fills that space more than any frantic speech. The energy shifts to you, unconsciously. They wait because they sense something meaningful is arriving, or because they fear breaking the silence first. Also, silence protects your boundaries. When you refuse to respond hastily, you deny emotional hijacking. Anger, disrespect, provocation, these try to drag you into reaction. But when you hold your tongue, you regain control. In private, you reflect. In public, you choose your response. That discipline signals you move on your terms, not theirs. That kind of composure unsettles those who rely on chaos. But strategic silence is not cowardice. It is intentional. You do not hide behind your quiet. You elevate your internal strength through it. Silence gives you space to consider, to see the full picture before reacting. Others act on impulse. You act on principle. That gap between stimulus and response becomes your sanctuary. In that gap lies your power. The Stoic foundation of quiet mastery. Why do the Stoics value silence so deeply? Because silence supports clarity, self-command, and virtue. Let's revisit a few of their teachings. Epictetus taught that external events cannot harm you, only your judgments. In silence, you attend to your judgments, unclouded by emotional clamor. Seneca instructed that tranquility is the goal of life. Silence, deliberately practiced, is a path to inner calm, a shield against distractions. Marcus Aurelius often retreated into silence and solitude, writing in his meditations. In those quiet moments, he reminded himself of what matters and dismissed what does not. These Stoic sages prioritized the internal domain over external acclaim. They knew that influence must begin within. You must be sovereign in your mind before commanding presence in the world. Silence is the training ground for that sovereignty. When you remain silent, you practice patience. When you resist speaking impulsively, you train restraint. Every moment you don't speak is a mini victory over your passions, and those small victories accumulate. Soon, the person you were, the reactive one, gives way to someone more composed, more refined, more resilient. I search in study the mechanics of silent perception. Silence does not mean you withdraw your senses. On the contrary, you turn them up. Your hearing sharpens. You notice the slight hitch in a voice. You perceive the half smile, the tightening of the jaw. You measure the distance between people, the lean of the shoulders, the focus of attention. All those details form a mosaic of real intentions. In conversation, the one who speaks first often gives away too much. They reveal their thoughts, justify, clarify, but silence forces others to project themselves. They speak more, reveal more, overexpose. You then choose your words or choose your silence with superior awareness. If someone challenges you, they expect you to react. But when you don't, the challenge falters. They sense your reserve. They hesitate. The unvoiced tension weighs on them while you remain still, unmoved. That is the power of silent resilience. It turns aggression into hesitancy. Silence also grants you isolation from fear. When your identity is not tied to constant speaking, you no longer fear the judgment that follows your words. You speak only when conviction demands it. Every word becomes optional, not necessary. And that threshold changes everything. You are free through silence. Because what you will learn in this training, in this lesson series, you will learn 4 silent techniques, beginning from the deepest and most advanced, then moving outward. 1. Energetic authority, the inner strength that radiates without needing announcement. 2. Emotional indifference, how to be unmoved by provocation or praise. 3. Strategic absence, withdrawing presence to increase value. 4. Observation mastery, reading people, situations, and power flows without a word. In subsequent parts, we will cover each of these in reverse order, from high mastery down to foundational practices. You will see how they build upon each other. By the time you reach the final part, you will not only understand silence, you will live it. You will move through rooms quietly, yet dominantly. You will engage with people, but never be consumed by them. You will unlock a form of influence rooted in integrity, not intimidation. A small case to illustrate. Imagine 2 executives in a meeting. One speaks constantly, pushing ideas, interrupting, raising his voice to assert dominance. The other says little. He listens, he nods, he pauses. When he finally speaks, his words weigh more. His suggestions are digested, not dismissed. Why? Because the silence made room. In another setting, suppose someone criticizes you in public. Many would rush to defend, to justify, or to insult back. But you stay quiet. You let their words echo in the room. You walk away. In the next interaction, people mention how composed you were. That quiet strength gains respect. The critic, deprived of reaction, loses momentum. These examples show how silence shifts dynamics. When others expect escalation, you deliver calm. When they expect noise, you offer stillness. And that contrast defines you. Your quiet becomes the stage on which all else moves. How to begin practicing silence today. 1. Pause before you speak. Instantly delay your response by a breath or 2. Let the moment settle. 2. Use minimal words. When you do speak, aim for clarity and brevity. Remove filler, qualify less. 3. Observe first. Before reacting emotionally, scan expressions, posture, tone. Don't rush to judgment. 4. Embrace quiet time alone. Seek daily moments of solitude. Let your silence deepen. 5. Test in low-stakes interactions. Try withholding comment in small debates or chit-chat. See how people shift. Each of these practices feels simple, and yet it is hard. Because the mind craves motion, the ego craves sound. You will feel the urge to break silence. Resist. With every resistance, you grow. As we progress, you will emerge not as someone who forces outcomes, but someone who shapes them quietly. Mastery will not be loud, but it will be undeniable. Your presence will become a language, one that speaks truth, authority, patience, restraint. That silent language will become your greatest mark. Let silence become your ally. Let quietness be your force. And let the Stoic discipline you build here ripple outward, touching every room you enter. When you're ready, we move to part 2 and unlock energetic authority. Tú dijiste, todo el párrafos y si subtítulos genera de nuevo temas de estoicismo. Reels dijo, gracias por la claridad. A continuación, te presento la parte 1 completamente reconstruida, con un flujo narrativo continuo, sin subtítulos, con párrafos largos, de 5 a 6 líneas completas cada uno en inglés, y manteniendo el comentario insertado de forma natural en el segundo párrafo. Part 1, Introduction. You enter a room and say nothing. Still, people notice you, not because you speak, but because you don't. There's something in the way you carry yourself, something in your stillness that draws eyes. You're not performing, you're not trying to impress, but your presence alone creates a shift in the space. That's the beginning of real influence, the kind that doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. The kind that comes not from loudness, but from control. And the root of that control is silence. Comment below. Ever use silence to win? This is not about manipulation. It's about knowing your own weight and using it sparingly. The world is addicted to noise. People rush to speak, to defend, to justify themselves. But the one who stays quiet holds the tension. They don't lose energy trying to dominate others with words. They let their restraint speak for them. And that restraint, when rooted in clarity, when tied to purpose, becomes a kind of gravity. People lean toward it without even knowing why. When you understand silence, you realize it's not the absence of something. It's the presence of everything. It allows space for truth to appear. It reveals who's grounded and who's not. It breaks patterns. Most people speak to escape discomfort, to avoid the pressure of uncertainty. But when you remain still, you force others to face themselves. That pause becomes a mirror. In that mirror, people see their own insecurity, their own need to be heard, and often their own emptiness. That is the power of silence. It reflects. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't chase recognition or attention. They pursued virtue, and virtue doesn't scream, it doesn't perform. It stands quietly, unwavering, even when the world is falling apart. When Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire, he wrote to himself, not to others. In the privacy of his mind, he examined his reactions, his fears, his judgments. And what he found was that everything external, fame, insult, success, blame, was noise. Noise he didn't have to respond to. Silence gave him clarity. That kind of silence is different from hiding. It's not withdrawal from fear, it's presence through strength. When you choose not to respond, not to explain yourself, not to fill every gap with noise, you're saying, I do not owe you my energy. That's not coldness. It's discipline. It's a refusal to be pulled into every battle, every opinion, every emotion that's not aligned with your principles. And when you practice that enough, people notice. They might not say it out loud, but they feel it. You are not like them. You are not moved easily. Imagine someone insults you publicly. The expected move is to react, defend yourself, attack back, correct the record. But the Stoic move is different. You pause. You let the words land and disappear. You look at the person calmly, not with hatred or fear, but with understanding. And then you move on. Not because you're weak, but because you know your dignity is not up for auction. That silence, that calm, that refusal to be disturbed. It stings more than any comeback because it proves you are free. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's not saying whatever you feel. It's choosing what deserves your voice. The man who speaks all the time is not free. He's a slave to approval, to impulse, to noise. But the one who speaks rarely and only when it matters, that man is dangerous. Because when he finally speaks, people listen, not out of fear, but out of respect. They know his words come from reflection, not reaction. His silence gave his speech weight. You don't need to raise your voice to be powerful. You need to raise your standards. You need to master your inner dialogue so thoroughly that outer chaos doesn't touch you. That's what the Stoics trained for, not to control the world, but to control their response to it. And when you can stand in the middle of noise, provocation, injustice, and remain clear, then you become a pillar. Others bend, you remain, not because you're cold, but because you are rooted. Power without noise is rare, but it's unforgettable. Think of the people you've truly respected. Chances are they weren't the loudest. They were the most composed. Their power came not from what they said, but from how little they needed to say. That's what we're building here. Not arrogance, not withdrawal, but presence. Deep, calm, focused presence. The kind that moves others without trying to. The kind that outsmarts everyone, not by speaking, but by standing still when everyone else rushes to speak. So here's what you'll learn in the coming sections: how to use silence to observe deeply, how to withdraw to increase your value, how to detach emotionally from what doesn't matter, and how to project energy that speaks louder than any word. Each of these practices is rooted in ancient Stoic thought, but each is more relevant today than ever. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs clarity. And that clarity begins with you. Let others chase applause. Let them argue. Let them prove. You instead will train your stillness. You will learn to breathe before speaking, to notice before reacting, to understand before deciding. And in doing so, you will gain an edge that no one can take, a silent edge, a disciplined advantage, the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to be right, only real. This isn't about pretending to be calm, it's about becoming someone who is. And that takes practice, it takes discomfort, because silence isn't easy. It exposes you, it reveals your urges. But if you stay with it, if you sit with that discomfort and you grow, slowly, steadily, you become someone who doesn't flinch, someone who doesn't chase or flee, someone who sees clearly, acts precisely, and speaks only when the moment is right. That is the Stoic ideal. That is strength. Let's begin. Imagine someone blames you unfairly. Another praises you for something you didn't intend. A friend turns cold without explanation. A stranger tries to provoke you just to feel powerful. All of these are tests, not of your reputation, not of your intelligence, but of your stability. And if you rely on how others treat you to remain steady, you've already surrendered your peace. Emotional indifference is not apathy. It's sovereignty. It's the ability to feel everything, but be owned by nothing. That is what the Stoics mastered and what you must now build inside yourself. When you learn to detach your mood from external events, you become someone very few people know how to handle, because most are used to pushing buttons and getting reactions. They insult and expect anger. They flatter and expect gratitude. They ghost you and expect confusion. But when you don't flinch, when your face stays composed, your body still, your voice calm, you become unpredictable. You become powerful. because you are no longer a puppet moved by strings you don't control. You've cut the strings, and you move yourself. This discipline begins with one truth: you are not your emotions. Emotions visit you. They rise, they fall, they fade. But you are the observer, not the wave. The moment you forget this, you start living reactively. You become whatever happens to you. That's how most people live, as weather vanes turning in the winds of other people's moods, comments, actions. But the Stoic sees this as weakness. Epictetus said, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." The anger is not the enemy. The identification with it is. Detachment doesn't mean being emotionless. It means feeling fully without drowning. When someone disrespects you, you feel it, but you don't let it define you. You don't build a story around it, and you certainly don't make it your identity. You pause. You ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, you release it, not because you're passive, but because you're focused. You know where your power begins and ends. And that's a rare kind of clarity in a world that encourages outrage as a lifestyle. There will be times when you're tested by betrayal, disappointment, or failure. Your heart will race, your chest will tighten. But even in that storm, you can remain anchored, because emotional indifference is not about never feeling. It's about not obeying every emotion that arises. You recognize it, breathe through it, and respond instead of reacting. This is strength, not the strength of resistance, but the strength of permission. You allow emotions to visit, but not to stay. They don't get to unpack and rule your decisions. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Adversity reveals the depth of your control, not when things are calm, but when chaos knocks. In those moments, your reaction reveals your training. Do you rage, panic, collapse? Or do you breathe, assess, and move forward without unnecessary noise? That's what separates the amateur from the philosopher, the person who lives by feelings and the one who lives by principles. Most of the time, you don't need to fight the world. You need to fight your need to respond to it. If someone criticizes you, let them. If someone ignores you, so be it. If someone loves you, receive it. But don't depend on it, because the moment your inner state is tied to external behavior, you become a hostage. The Stoic life is a life of freedom, and that freedom is earned by internal command. The battlefield is not out there, it's in here, in the space between trigger and response. And yes, you will fail. You will be pulled in sometimes. You'll respond too quickly or too harshly. You'll feel something and get swept away. That's part of the process. The point is not perfection, it's awareness. Every time you catch yourself, you grow. Every time you pause instead of react, you strengthen the muscle of mastery. That's how resilience is built, not in theory but in repetition, not in calm moments but in storms. Eventually, you'll notice something. People won't know how to provoke you, their weapons stop working, their games fall flat. And they'll either respect you or fear you, but both come from the same source. They realize they can't control you. And that's when your silence becomes a wall, your calm becomes a shield, and your stillness becomes influence. You're no longer available for every emotional invitation. You've unsubscribed from the drama of the world. You've chosen clarity. Now, imagine living like that, not as a performance, but as a practice. Each morning, you remind yourself, nothing outside me can disturb me unless I let it in. Each night, you review, where did I give my peace away? Where did I remain firm? That's how the Stoics lived, always examining, always refining, always returning to center. Not cold, but focused, not numb, but free. And in that freedom, you'll find something else. Peace. A kind of quiet peace that doesn't depend on things going your way. A peace that isn't about success or comfort, but about alignment. You are in control of you. That's the greatest security a human can know. Because when emotions no longer drive the wheel, you start choosing your path with clear hands. This is emotional indifference. This is Stoic strength. This is the discipline of inner sovereignty. And once you taste it, you'll never go back. Let's continue. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave, not in anger, not in silence meant to punish, but in clarity. Strategic absence is the art of stepping back to increase your presence. In a world addicted to constant visibility, the one who chooses to disappear, to retreat with intention, holds a strange and undeniable power. The Stoics understood this. They knew that being everywhere weakens you, but to remove yourself purposefully, quietly, makes people notice. Not because you forced them to, but because your absence created space for your value to echo. Disappearing is not the same as running away. One is cowardice, the other is command. When you withdraw not from fear, but from focus, you shift the entire dynamic. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer chasing recognition or approval. You choose when and where to be seen. That choice becomes influence. Most people don't understand this. They show up everywhere. They comment on everything. They're online non-stop. And in doing so, they dilute their energy, their mystery, their impact. Strategic absence reclaims that energy. It brings attention back to where it belongs, on what matters. There is power in being missed. When you always make yourself available, you become predictable. You become expected. And what is expected loses weight. But when you vanish, for an hour, a day, a season, you reset the room. People wonder. People notice. Your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. And when you return, your presence carries new gravity. This is not manipulation. It's recognition of human psychology. What is rare is valued. What is constant is taken for granted. Strategic absence is a form of self-respect. Marcus Aurelius often retreated into his own mind. Even while ruling the most powerful empire of his time, he wrote in solitude, detached from flattery, from politics, from performance. He understood that leadership is not about being seen. It's about being stable. And stability requires space. You cannot think clearly when you're always visible. You cannot grow when you're always performing. Absence allows digestion. Absence allows reflection. Absence makes room for becoming. In your own life, you must ask, where am I too present? Where have I made myself too accessible, too explainable, too ordinary? Begin to reclaim your presence. You don't need to leave with drama. You don't need to explain yourself. You simply pull back, you go quiet, you focus inward. Let people wonder, let them fill the silence. Their discomfort is not your concern. Your concern is your own clarity, your own direction. The Stoic does not need the crowd to feel real. He needs only himself and the principles he returns to. Strategic absence also protects your energy. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every conversation deserves a response. Not every invitation deserves your time. When you say no, when you choose distance, you're not being harsh. You're being wise. You are recognizing that your presence is limited and therefore sacred. If you offer it to everything, it means nothing. But if you offer it selectively, it becomes priceless. And that is what the wise cultivate. Not presence everywhere, but impact in the few places that matter. Sometimes disappearing is also a response. When someone disrespects you, silence is louder than confrontation. When someone takes you for granted, distance is more honest than words. You don't need to argue. You don't need to fight. You simply remove your presence. That removal becomes the message. It says, I do not participate in what diminishes me. And that line, that boundary, is not drawn with noise. It's drawn with absence. Calm, clean, unapologetic absence. The beauty of strategic absence is that it allows you to return stronger. You go inward, you reflect, you build, you clarify. And when you reappear, you are not the same. You are more composed, more focused, more aligned. People will feel the difference even if they don't understand it. That's what real growth does. It doesn't ask for validation. It speaks through transformation. The world notices, but you don't need them to. You've already seen the shift within yourself. The Stoics were not performers. They didn't seek constant recognition. They sought mastery. And mastery often requires solitude, silence, distance. They walked away not to escape life, but to engage it more deeply. You must do the same. Step back from the noise. Exit the rooms where your value is not seen. Pull your energy from the places where your presence is wasted. And watch what happens. Watch how your power consolidates. Watch how your clarity sharpens. Watch how your absence becomes your advantage. And when you return, when you speak, when you move, when you act, you will no longer be just another voice in the crowd. You will be the one who chose stillness over attention, the one who chose silence over performance, the one who withdrew not to hide, but to rise. That is strategic absence. That is Stoic precision. That is how you become untouchable. Most people go through life seeing almost nothing. They look, but they don't see. They hear, but they don't listen. They speak before they understand. But the Stoic watches, the Stoic studies. The Stoic knows that to influence the world, you must first read it with precision. Observation is not passive. It's not simply watching events unfold. It's collecting data, analyzing patterns, identifying truths that others are too distracted to see. And when you master this, when you train your mind to see deeply, you gain an edge that no noise can match. In every room you enter, there is information. How people sit, who they look at, what they avoid, the pace of their speech, the tension in their hands, the direction of their feet. Most ignore these signs because they're too busy thinking of what to say next. But the one who is quiet, who watches, who slows down, sees everything. And when you see, you don't have to guess, you don't have to assume, you know, because the body never lies. And people always reveal themselves if you know where to look. Observation is the Stoic's first weapon. Before you speak, before you act, you watch, you absorb. You let people show you who they are without forcing them to. You give them silence, and they fill it with clues. They reveal their fears in what they avoid. They show their values in what they repeat. They expose their motives in what makes them nervous, and all of it is useful, not for judgment, but for wisdom. When you observe without needing to react, you become a mirror. And in your stillness, the truth appears. There is great discipline in watching because it requires you to hold your emotions still, to not jump to conclusions, to not impose your narrative. Instead, you become curious. You become precise. This is not paranoia, it's perception. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly to observe what things are made of, what they do, and what they aim for. This kind of thinking keeps you rooted in reality, not fantasy. It protects you from being deceived, not just by others, but by your own assumptions. In practice, observation means scanning the environment before moving, listening fully before speaking, noticing details others miss. You watch for the moment before someone lies, that quick shift of the eyes, the hesitation before an excuse, the change in breathing when they feel threatened. These are not tricks, they're truths waiting for attention. And when you train your awareness to catch them, you no longer get surprised. You anticipate, you adapt, you stay ahead, not by speed, but by clarity. And clarity is rare. Most people move through life blind, distracted by their phones, their insecurities, their internal monologues. But the Stoic removes those layers. He strips the moment down to what is. He sees what others ignore, and because of that, he suffers less. He acts more precisely. He connects more honestly. Observation becomes his compass, guiding him through the fog of daily noise. When you master observation, you don't just see others, you see yourself. You catch your own reactions. You notice your own ego flaring up. You watch your thoughts come and go like passing clouds, and this turns your gaze inward, where the deepest mastery begins. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's observation applied inward, seeing clearly what you are and what must change. This kind of awareness takes time. It requires slowing down, noticing, tracking patterns. It's not dramatic, it's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Because the one who sees clearly moves decisively. They don't waste energy, they don't fight unnecessary battles, they don't trust blindly. Their vision protects them, positions them, and prepares them. And this vision is born not from genius, but from attention. Let others chase attention. You will chase perception. Let them rush. You will wait. Let them speak. You will listen. And in your stillness, you will see the cracks in the surface, the gaps in the story, the pressure points in the room. And from that, you will know when to speak, where to stand, what to ignore, and who to avoid. That knowledge is not loud. It's not visible, but it's felt. People sense when you see more than you say. And that makes them cautious, that makes them respectful, that makes you untouchable. This is observation mastery. This is what the Stoics practiced daily, in the courts, in the streets, in battle, in reflection. To watch, to understand, to choose. You do not need to predict the future. You only need to see the present without illusion. When you do, you stop walking into traps. You stop misjudging people. You stop confusing appearances with reality, and in that clarity, you move like water, unhurried, smooth, effective. Now you are ready for the final step. You've made it this far, and by now, something inside you has shifted, not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply. You feel it. A quiet certainty, a calm strength, a presence that wasn't there before, or maybe it was, and now you're just uncovering it. That's the essence of Stoicism. Not adding more, not chasing new things, but returning to what has always been inside you, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be practiced, waiting to be lived. You've learned that to outsmart anyone, you don't need to speak louder, you need to see clearer. You don't need to win arguments, you need to master your emotions. You don't need to explain your worth, you need to embody it. Silence, presence, clarity, self-control. These are not soft traits. They are weapons, not to harm others, but to guard yourself. Not to dominate others, but to master yourself. And in doing so, you become someone the world cannot manipulate, cannot distract, cannot break. Think back to the last time you reacted too quickly, the last time someone said something that got under your skin, the last time you needed to prove yourself. That was not weakness, that was training ground. Every moment you've ever lost your temper, every time you fell into over-explaining, overthinking, chasing validation, all of that can now become fuel. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to practice, to return, to refine. That is the path of the Stoic, one choice at a time. The techniques you've learned, observation mastery, strategic absence, emotional indifference, energetic authority, they are not tricks. They are habits of the free, tools of the unshakable. They work because they reflect reality, because they respect the laws of nature, because they don't rely on the behavior of others, but on the strength of your own mind. That is why they last. That is why they work, and that is why they will change you if you commit. But knowing them is not enough. You must live them. You must take them into your next conversation, your next conflict, your next silence. Pause before you speak. Watch before you move. Withdraw before you explain. Center before you respond. Let others live in noise. You will live in precision. You will move not because they pull you, but because you choose to move. That choice, that autonomy, is your power. And it will separate you from the crowd. Most people are desperate to be seen. They want likes, followers, applause. But the Stoic wants something else, to be grounded, to be whole, to be free. The world will not reward you for that. It might not even understand you, but that's the point. You're not here to be understood by the world. You're here to understand yourself, to move with clarity while others stumble in confusion, to remain anchored when the winds of emotion drag others into chaos. That's what sets you apart. Not your voice, but your silence. Not your speed, but your stillness. Not your certainty, but your discipline. And yes, it will be lonely sometimes. The path of mastery often is. People will question your quiet. They'll mistake it for weakness. They'll try to provoke you, to test you, to call you back into noise. Don't follow them. Stay where you are, rooted, watching, waiting, acting only when necessary. Because each time you choose stillness over reaction, you grow. Each time you walk away instead of arguing, you grow. Each time you choose discipline over impulse, you grow. And that growth is invisible until it isn't. Until one day they see you differently. Not because you changed suddenly, but because you practiced in silence for long enough that it became who you are. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more clarity, more stillness, more people who lead not by shouting, but by being. That's what we aim for here at Stoic Diary. Not to build followers, but to build foundations. Not to entertain you, but to sharpen you, to walk beside you in this path of becoming. Because this isn't a one-time lesson. It's a lifelong return to center. A daily rehearsal of inner peace. A constant realignment with truth. So what now? Now you test everything. You walk into the same rooms, but you are not the same person. You face the same people, but you see them more clearly. You hear the same noise, but it no longer shakes you because you are anchored. You are prepared. You are practiced. And if you falter, and you will, you return. Always return. The Stoic does not aim for perfection. He aims for consistency, for resilience, for alignment, and you are already walking that road. If this spoke to you, let it continue. Leave a comment with just one word: centered. Not for the algorithm, not for attention, but as a reminder to yourself that you are returning to your center, that you are not reacting. You are observing, you are choosing, you are building, and if you want more quiet strength, more deep clarity, stay with us here on Stoic Diary. This is not just a channel, it's a practice, a reminder, a mirror, a call to something higher, something deeper, something more lasting than noise. Stay silent, stay sharp, stay sovereign. Let others make noise, you make presence.